Welcome to Birdseeds. Hey guys, I'm excited to have a really awesome guest on here today. Somebody I've known since high school. Somebody we've known each other for a long time. We haven't been super close over that time, but we keep running into each other, and we've always connected on like a deep level, more so than just kind of the surface, like things you do with people you don't know that well, whether it be at a party or some sort of networking event. But it's always been like a deep connection. And somebody that I wanted to introduce to you guys. So welcome Scott and Nathan to Birdseeds.
Thanks, Joe. Good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, glad you could make it. Something that we've been working on for a while.
And it is fun. We've known each other a long time, and we keep coming back into one another's lives. And each time we reconnect, I feel like we've been on very parallel tracks.
Different, but parallel.
Different, but parallel, yes.
For sure. Yeah, and I think we've always had this idea and this ability to think bigger than the moment, bigger than ourselves, and it's something we've developed.
Still working on it.
Correct, but we've always had the ability to do that, and something we've always prioritized as we've continued down our separate but parallel journeys. And I think that's why we both had success in life and why we both are on the same journey for happiness. That really, I think, is what keeps you motivated and keeps you going. It's the only thing that matters at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I would say that is our kind of current parallel, something that it's very cool to see what you're doing with the podcast, and excited to follow along with you. Something that I have noticed recently is there's definitely been a focus on working on our happiness quotient, I call it, our happiness level, happiness ratio. And I just wanted to reach out and maybe trade some ideas. That's something I've been working on a lot as well too.
Yeah.
Just had to be happier.
Yep.
And I just wanted to reach out and maybe just exchange some ideas.
Absolutely.
And see if we can help each other improve our happiness levels.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mentioned on one of the last episodes my jamming that I do, my daily well-being checklist that I have. And I've got it back here. And just to remind everybody what that is, the J stands for journaling, and that's been the most recent addition to it, but man, it's made such a difference. Hydration, so the A is for aqua, for hydration. Mindfulness, so what do I mean by mindfulness? I mean calming the nervous system down. Silence, so that could be meditation. I do yoga nidra almost once a week, or as often as I can make it on Tuesday nights. Just basically calming the nervous system down and shutting the noise out for a second so you can actually think. The other M is for movement, so for me, walking. Some sort of exercise, something to get the blood flowing. Intentionality is the I. So just making sure that what I'm doing is purposeful and it's meeting my goals. So what that looks like for me is every Monday morning, I look at what's on my calendar for the week and I try to optimize the time. Maybe that's move an appointment so that I'm going to the same area once and not back there. Whether that's just making sure that my things that I need to do that are not already scheduled get in the calendar. And then every morning, one of the first things I do is I look at my calendar while I'm waking up, drinking my coffee, and I organize my day to make sure that it's going to be intentional. It's not just going to be bouncing around. And then the last is novel for reading. And that's something I've added into my life more recently. It goes back to kind of the mindfulness, the quiet. It does kind of block the noise out and allows you to kind of focus, and you learn. I mean, that's so important. And I don't care if you're listening to audiobooks or you're reading a book. I do both at different times. It doesn't matter. Either way, you're focused on a story, you're focused on something that's not already in your head, and you learn from it, and it just quiets the mind. So, but yeah, do you have any kind of like checklist or like anything like that you do?
Sure. And it was about jamming was one of the things I absolutely struck a chord and reached out about. Awesome. It reminded me of, and I've heard a few of these different kind of versions, and whether it's an acronym or just some way that we kind of remember, a tool to remember it. But the key on it is identifying the things that matter to you and tracking it.
Yeah.
Having a way that you do it where first I do this, then I do this. And an acronym, you are not the first person I've seen that used an acronym to set a good morning routine and morning cadence. Savers, a book that really had a big impact in my life, and probably could get back to it. But it's A Miracle Morning. Forget the author's name, but
Hal Elrod.
There we go.
Yep.
And I will say it's an acronym. I don't even remember what all of them are, but and some of them are a stretch.
So am I.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
If by saying hydrate and A and aqua, but you're drinking water,
right?
Who cares? Who cares? The key on it is putting purposeful thought into what inputs matter.
Exactly.
Focusing on those, doing them over and over, and each time maybe get a little bit better, and then you keep getting better, and then you look back and all these things that I've been working on. Wow, look what I've accomplished over the last year.
Exactly.
You can accomplish a lot. I feel like in an hour I always think I can do a lot more than I can actually do.
Yep.
But then if we zoom out over 10 years, I can actually accomplish so much more than really you can picture accomplishing in whatever that longer period is.
Yeah, one of my mentors is a guy named Tom Ferry, who's a real estate coach. On Tom Ferry, Your Coach. It's the largest professional coaching program in the world. And I subscribe to the coaching. My coach, Don Jacks, is awesome. But one of the things Tom says is that we massively overestimate what we can do in a week and grossly underestimate what we can do in a year. And 5 years and 10 years, it gets even worse. So he talks about that when he's talking about goal setting. Like, okay, do a little bit less each day, but build more out in the long term. And, you get to that goal in 5 years, you're like, man, I could have done so much more if I only focused on that.
That was a much more eloquent way of what I was going for. So that was great.
Yeah, well, I didn't come up with it, so yeah.
To answer your question, though, and I can only really take on 1 or 2, max 3 things I'm really focused on at a time. So right now I have recommitted to really doing a better job with my meditation practice. Yeah. I was doing a very good job a few years ago, fell off track. I'm now, I think yesterday was day 21,
nice.
Which is the magic number to start a habit, so they say. More important this go around is I actually feel a difference. Like I feel a sense of calm. What really helped, big shout out to my sister Melissa. She put me on an app that seems to suit what I need. As soon as we gamify something, once the streak is broken, I don't know what'll happen, but as long as I can keep the streak going, I should be good.
That's awesome. What's the app?
It's called 10% Happier.
Okay.
And
write that
it
down.
is there's a book, 10% Happier, that I really got a lot out of. I don't know, I read it a year or 2 ago. And now there's an app that goes along with the book, 10% Happier.
That's
it's
awesome.
A former news broadcaster,
okay.
I forget which network, that found himself getting so caught up in the day-to-day, he was driving himself crazy, and was seeking solutions, fell into meditation, and it has seemed to really work with him, or worked for him rather.
Yeah.
And he's trying to share that with others.
That's awesome. Yeah, I use an app called Insight Timer. It's free. There's a paid membership. I've never done it. It's done really well. There's challenges you can do, and sometimes I do the challenges, but every time I go to acupuncture, which I do once a week, I pull that up, I grab a 40-minute meditation and just zone out. It's awesome. I'll tell you, right before you came today, I got out of the shower and just kind of was feeling like anxious in general, not about this, but just in general, I was kind of feeling like agitated, not ready to calm down. So I sat down to put my shoes on and went, you know what, I'm going to meditate. And it was probably maybe a minute-long meditation. Just box breathe for a few minutes and then just kind of let my mind go silent. I'll tell you one hack I have for a really quick meditation in the moment is you box breathe for a couple rounds so you can control your breath, and then you just let your breath be what it's going to be and notice it. But your mind is going to start to wander, and that's okay. You let it wander, you let it come back. But ask your brain this question: I wonder what my next thought will be. You can't answer it, and that winds up becoming a mantra, and then it winds up totally sending you right into meditation, at least for me.
I will try that.
I forget who I stole that from, but I stole it from somebody. So whoever that was, sorry I stole it from you, but it works.
I love that. I wasn't planning on diving too deep into meditation here, but something that I have started doing that has worked for me is a kind of it's all about focusing on the breathing, and I beat myself up over not doing it right sometimes, but that's really not possible because I am still breathing.
Right, exactly.
That's when you're not doing it right, and then you got other issues if you're no longer breathing. But what I've started doing is start off with 3 big, very purposeful deep breaths.
Yep.
And then shift into counting normal breaths while picturing waves in an ocean.
There you go.
Some breaths, naturally like waves, will be larger, and I ride that larger wave. And then the next one maybe is going to be a little shallower.
Yeah.
And just picture the waves. I count them.
That's awesome.
I do it during acupuncture. I've not been able to get past 20.
Okay.
And that was a huge win when I got to 20.
Yeah.
But then the mind wanders.
Yeah.
And then what can you do? You can either start back at 0 or go back to 21, but just go back to counting.
It doesn't matter.
Yes.
I find too, like the
breath.
mind wandering, yeah, the silence is great, but when it does wander, it wanders to places that you don't normally go to. At least for me, I start seeing connections to things that may or may not be related in my, like, external mind. Like, I don't necessarily think that they're related, but when that noise goes away, it does all of a sudden start to draw these conclusions that weren't there before and see the relationships between things. And it's like, grab that nugget, go back to silence. If it wanders off, grab that nugget, go back to silence.
You're able to connect dots that if we're just caught up in the day-to-day, there's no chance that we're ever making those connections.
Exactly. One other thing, I did this, it was on Insight Timer. It was a learn to meditate, and it was probably the most impactful thing I've listened to because it got me into this. I was never able to get quiet enough, and this is like, it was a daily thing, daily challenge, and there were a couple of really good ones in there. There's one that went into emotions. That's a whole other episode I'll get into at some point. It's very personal and vulnerable, but I'll get into it. But another one was you're using your senses during meditation. So it gets you into the meditative state, and then what do you smell? What do you feel? What do you taste? What do you hear? Then it sort of leads you to say, hey, next time you're in a moment where you're feeling out of control, you're feeling like you're just, there's so much happening, you don't know what to do, take a whiff. What do you think about, what do you taste? What do you smell? What do you hear? It brings you right back to the moment. It takes you out of the anxiety of all the noise. I mean, for me, anxiety is like noise in the background. It's like worried about the future. Where's this going to go? Where's this going to go? I can't control this. I can't control this. Where am I at? That's what that is. It shuts that right up because you go right to the present, right into this moment. It's awesome.
And it's funny you use the word noise, and I know noise can be figurative. It can be literal. Just yesterday during my acupuncture, it was the literal noise. It encompassed exactly what you just said. It was literal noise that if I had let my mind go wild, if I just let my mind do its thing, could have quickly kind of ruined my acupuncture.
Yeah.
But instead was able to just take a quarter step back and think about why I cared, I guess, that much about the noise interrupting. And just that half step back and that half second of moment of pause took it from what could have been quickly spiraled into a not great experience, brought it back to where it was supposed to be, a nice, therapeutic, relaxing, and it was the literal noise that was actually getting to me on that one.
That's funny. Have you ever done binaural beats?
What was that?
Binaural beats?
Binaural? No.
Oh, it's crazy.
I've never heard of it. What is
crazy.
that?
So there are certain frequencies that elicit different emotions and different responses from your nervous system. So you put on headphones, and I forget, I'm going to mess up all the hertz or whatever, but there's very specific frequencies, and it kind of sounds like a warbling, like a where it's like bouncing back between two frequencies that almost are the same, but not quite. And it'll literally, like, within seconds, put you in a certain state.
Can you link me?
Yeah. So there's
someone
Insight Timer you can get to. Just go to the search and do binaural beats. BINAURAL.
Okay.
Binaural beats, and it's
Thank you for that.
I was having a day the other day. Again, long story, but I was having some challenges in some personal issues, and I went to go lay down for a minute just to pull myself, like something I've done differently in the last year that I didn't do before. When I get into those moments of like there's chaos and anger starts to really show up, I've started to remove myself from the situation. I need to get earlier in that removal, but I'm getting there. It's a practice, right? There's none of this as an act. It's a practice. And I went and laid down for a second, and I was not going to get into a meditative state. I was too anxious. I was too worked up. Threw the headphones on and put binaural beat on. Calm me right down. I laid there for, 2-3 minutes, and I got up with a whole new attitude, came back out to the problem, and solved it. So it's crazy.
And I said take a half step backwards. I meant it proverbially, but that's what you removing yourself. That's exactly what that is.
Exactly.
And it's just finding the half second before for me. Once I'm going, but forcing a half second to just like wait before we take off. Let's just take a moment.
Exactly.
Take a moment.
Exactly.
And this does kind of lead me into it's a little bit of a not controversial statement, but I don't know that everyone will agree. But I would like. I was planning on talking to you a lot about happiness, and in my search, I am starting to, I think, come to the conclusion that we have a lot more control over our happiness level than we would ever realize. We can't control the things happening around us. We can control our reaction. Growing up, that was a family mantra that I would be very quick to brush aside. Now I am really seeing the wisdom that was inherent in that. So I have upset some people when I say that happiness is a choice.
It is.
But in a lot of ways, I feel like it in a lot of ways is.
I'm going to drive that down deeper for a second. So we are spot on. We can't control the things that happen to us. We really can't control our reactions. We can control our responses. And by controlling our responses and by feeding ourselves things that put us in a different state, our reactions will then change to align with our responses. Because reactions, you tap my knee, I don't think about my leg popping up, or you tap my elbow, I feel the zing down. Those are reactions. Those are uncontrollable. But you train your mind on how you want it to be, your reactions will now match what you wanted them to do, your responses. So, big believer in that.
I like that, and that also goes in line with I think a lot of people refer to it as the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
AA uses it, and
Absolutely.
I think it's like the heart of AA. They stole that. It's not just for AA. Anybody can use that, and what the focus and maybe for anyone not familiar, serenity prayer, it talks about knowing what you can change.
The wisdom
knowing
to know
what
the
you
difference.
can't
Right.
change, and then having the wisdom to know the difference between what you can and can't change. Anybody can use that. What are we focusing on when our mind wanders? Does it wander to negative? Are we ruminating, or are we appreciating?
Exactly.
Does it wander to the things that the other guy has, or the things that I wish I had, or who knows? Or are we looking around and seeing all the things that we could be grateful for, because they are everywhere, and you don't need to look too far.
No. I've had this sort of philosophy for a long time. So for me, what happens for me to make change, I have like a philosophy, like a thought, and it makes sense. It takes me a while to internalize it to be able to actually make benefit from it, but I have to realize it first. But I've had this thought of there is equal good and equal bad in every moment, and you experience what you focus on. Right? There's bad in a lot of moments, but there's also opportunity in bad moments. And when something bad happens, there's a choice. You can feel bad about it, or you can feel grateful for the times it wasn't bad. And it's okay to feel those. Either one. There's not a bad response there. You can feel bad about it. The key is not staying in the bad. The key is going, okay, there's bad here, but what else am I feeling? Feelings are not singular. They're not just one thing. I don't know if you've seen the feeling wheel before. I'll pull up a feeling wheel and kind of go through that. But the feeling wheel is really cool because it's like motion wheel, feeling wheel, I think is the two different names for it. But it's like it dives down into like extreme feelings versus smaller feelings. And the feelings that go together, because there's multiple feelings.
It's funny that you, and I'm sensing it's on a spectrum. As you first were talking about it, what came to mind is the phrase, the flip side of the coin, which is the opposite of a spectrum. Things are either on or off, black or white, the head side or the tail side. So it's interesting that you're looking at the opposite.
There's an album that came out today from one of my favorite artists, Shane Smith and the Saints, and talk about a story and them going through adversity. In 2019, they were one of the hardest working like independent country bands out there. In 2019, their van caught fire with their trailer and they lost everything they had. And they were faced at a decision point. Do we give it up? We've been doing this for, I don't know how long they've been doing it at that point, 10 years, probably more. And they were like kind of getting big. They were like one of the hardest working bands out there, but they weren't mainstream. They weren't breaking. They were, probably not making much money. They lost everything. What do we do? Do we give it up? Yellowstone got popular. Their music was on Yellowstone. They pushed through. So they start a band back together. They start pushing through, and then COVID happens. They're going to blow up. They are going to be big. Their music video for the album that came out today is on CMP now. Like, I was listening to Sirius Radio on Outlaw Country, which is still kind of underground, but they're playing them all the time now. Like, they are at that point where they are now going to get rewarded for their hard work. But the reason I brought them up, one of their songs, and I'm going to butcher the lyric, but it's something like, it's not the black and white, it's the grays in between. Like, talk about a poetic line that's like, all right, it's not the finality. Those are the ends and beginnings. Like, it's what matters is everything in between.
And that's the nuance.
It is the nuance.
That gray area is the nuance. I can't help but think that's the quintessential overnight success story.
Right, exactly.
Well, yeah, like tonight to tomorrow was one night, but you're not looking at any of the 5 or 10 or however many years when that led into it,
exactly.
The failed gigs and the so long as we are falling forward.
Yep.
So long as we are learning from those not good gigs, and hey, what do we do to not let that happen again? Yeah. What do we need to do differently? Yeah. Or that was a great gig. What went well? We need to do that every time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a reflection. It is 100% the reflection. When the moment's over, go back and do it. What was good, what was bad. And that kind of brings that to the color wheel. So I brought it up here. You can see it here, and obviously nobody that's listening or watching can see it. But like, let's say fearful, for example. Fearful is kind of the, the main feeling. I'm afraid of this moment. But then the next round is scared, anxious, insecure, weak, rejected, threatened. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then we can go deeper and say, I feel helpless. I feel frightened. I'm overwhelmed. I'm worried. I'm inadequate. I'm inferior. I'm worthless. I'm insignificant.
Let's get a little more positive, Joe. Come on.
But like, just think about that. Like, you're in a moment, you feel there's a business decision you need to make, and you're afraid of making that decision. What is that actually like? Are you really afraid? Or do you feel inadequate? Do you feel like you don't deserve it? You don't deserve the reward of that because you have all these deeper feelings, right?
But I would choose to look at, instead of the negative side, can we just look at the positive side of the coin for each one of those? Yeah. So you said like I forget which example you just said, but I think the opposite would be opportunity.
Right.
Opportunity for growth. Opportunity.
Correct.
So I am actually going back to two sides of the coin. Because and it relates to what you were saying. With these negatives, there is another side of the coin. That's exactly some sort of positive that we can draw from it. If we just throw our hands in the air and say, "Oh, woe is me. Oh, it's another example of bad, bad, bad." Well, that's what we focus on.
Exactly.
Or we say, "Wait. I know there's another side of the coin here.
Yep.
I gotta find it.
So in that life-changing meditation I alluded to, and I'm not going to go deep into it because it's a whole episode in of itself, and I have the audio recording of me recapping. I got in the car, and I looked in the mirror, and I had tears running down my face. I didn't even know I was crying. And I just did an audio of what just happened during this meditation yoga session. But essentially, in a nutshell, it was the moment of realizing it was sort of two parallel feelings, the opposite ends of the spectrum on those two feelings, those two coins, and realizing that there's overlap of emotions that are not the main emotion, the stuff underneath, and it's like, whoa.
Tell me if I'm going too deep here.
Yeah.
So with the crying, can I ask, was this like close to around the time you're dealing with your mom's stuff?
No, this is actually a couple years ago.
Okay.
And it wasn't crying, it wasn't a sad cry.
But it was tears.
It was a release.
And that was the word my therapist talks about, because I also go through times where I like just TV music scores get me.
Yeah.
This Is Us. Yeah. I can't end one without crying. And I'm talking to my therapist about it, and he was saying that's just means the cup overfloweth. Yeah. What are you talking about?
Yep.
And he goes, there's no more room in the cup for your emotions. They just got to go somewhere, so they overflow in the form of tears.
So I'm not going to go into all the details because that's a whole episode. But basically in this moment, this meditation, it's like allow yourself to embrace this certain feeling and this event and the feelings that come from that event. And I do a good job, it's a bad thing, but I'm pretty good of like not actually experiencing the emotions and bottling them up and eating them and letting them, thinking they go away. They're really good swimmers, it turns out, if you try to drown them. But there was that cup. It was so bottled up, it took nothing for it to overflow, and it all came out. Mm-hmm. And I went to the opposite side of like a more happy emotion and realizing I had to work more and think more to get to that emotion. But then realizing that the two of them, when you cross-section them, had a lot of similarities. It was just the dominant one on top, mm-hmm. which usually the dominant one is the protective one. It's not the actual real one. It's the one that's easier to feel, so you feel that instead. And that's what you express.
Very interesting.
It is.
That actually kind of it brings me back to, wow, this is a flashback. I had a class in college that the class was pretty but there was one particular lecture that ended up being so big that so many people would come to the class that weren't even enrolled in the class. They had to move it to the auditorium. But anyway, the class was about happiness, and it is finding how to really tap into the positive when you see that happening, tapping into the positive. And
right.
I think what the lecture boiled down to is at any time, there are 3 keys to happiness that you can work at any time. And, well, okay, that seems pretty simple. And it really does boil down to appreciating at any moment 3 things. Appreciating where you are, appreciating what you're doing, and appreciating who you're with.
Yeah.
And at different times, difference of those matter more. So I've been thinking more about this a little bit lately. It's just kind of rattling around in the back of my head, and I'm realizing that I, go through my days trying to think about, is this checking the who I'm with box? Is this checking the what I'm doing box? Is this checking the where I am box? And what I'm realizing is the good days. So every day is a good day. So one of those things being checked at a time is a good. Mm-hmm. If I can find something where I'm actually doing 2 of those, great. The true happiness is when I can in the moment realize that I am doing something cool, somewhere cool, with people that I care about.
Yeah.
I don't know be better happiness than that. So I call it the trifecta.
Yeah.
Just always kind of seeking that trifecta. And what that forces me to do is go around my day saying, where am I? What am I doing? Who am I with? All right, what of these can I appreciate? Oh, wow. I could be thinking about all the negatives happening right now, or I could be thinking about all this cool stuff that is happening and where I'm doing it and who I'm with, and
exactly
appreciating those things. So
spot on, man.
The keys to happiness. I think it was Dr. Nichols. Wow, can't believe I pulled that out.
That's awesome.
In my brain.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like an amazing class and like life lessons and 100% all true.
And I've started questioning the value of college, and I think as a society we may be questioning that more. But it was a very expensive piece of paper. I don't know the true value. I do know that this class was tremendously valuable. I also know the relationships and the friendships. So I wouldn't trade it in. I wouldn't go back.
Right.
But I'm really glad I didn't. I found a way to not do it on a loan.
Right.
We're such a loan-forward society. And okay, is college the problem, or is the way that we approach and fund college the problem? But that also, we'll leave that one for another podcast too, probably.
Absolutely. Another way to sort of say something similar, and the board behind me, you can see, and this also came from Tom Ferry, is will this move me in the direction of my goals? And if the answer is yes, do it. If the answer is no, don't do it. The other way to say it, and something I've kind of talked about before, I think on this, is the difference between a value and a goal. Goals are checkable. I went to class. I graduated. I have a degree. I did this. Very important. Goals are key. Value is why you're doing it.
I used the word input earlier.
Yep, exactly. So the value, I graduated college because I want to be a professional whatever, and I want to build a life that goes like this, and I want this here. Well, the goal was graduating college, but if that was your value, now what? Now you have nothing to move to. So it's finding those values and really clearly defining those. And I'll tell you, in my journey, without the meditation and the calming the nervous system and all that kind of stuff, it's really hard to slow down and focus on those values. It's hard to do it even with that. Without that, I found it completely impossible. And I think it's super important.
I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
And back to I was talking a bit about happiness as a choice, and a lot of people, when I first say it, are like, "How dare you say that?" But I think part of it is, and it is going back to the self-talk.
Yeah.
Are we on the positive self-talk, and it spirals either way. Whether we're negative, ruminating about bad things, that snowballs, or seeing things to be thankful for, which then leapfrogs to the next thing to be thankful for, and it continues spiraling forward. I also think, relating to your I think it was the N novel, the reading, what information are you surrounding yourself, both front of mind and back of mind? What books are you reading? What podcasts are you listening? What kind of music are you listening to? Are we upbeat, positive songs? Are we down in the dumps, emo songs? And there's different moods and different times for different songs, but what are we surrounding ourselves with? What kind of stories and inspirations are we seeing out there? Yeah. There's another controversial. I see a lot of folks around me spending a lot of time and energy focused on reasons that they could and are victims of whatever their scenario is. And, what are you spending your time doing? They're on TikTok or whatever, seeing what other people have, or reasons that they aren't, whatever. They're scrolling, and that is not going to be helpful. Versus, are we doing a higher quality, whatever that activity? So instead of scrolling, maybe pick up a book. Are we doing a book about and the book I'm reading right now is about urban decay, so maybe not a great example, but are we doing
I'm reading 1984 right now. Probably not the best time.
Or I just finished reading Booker T. Washington autobiography.
Yeah.
Are we surrounding ourselves with inspirational stories? And even Booker T. Washington, I guess, is controversial, which I don't understand how, but goes to show you it's just like hard to please everyone. But I draw a tremendous amount of inspiration from his story. He had nothing, and through hard work and and it's not a pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. It's not what we're saying.
Right.
It's not what we're saying. And anyone that hasn't read it, without reading it, I'm not going to be the spoiler here, but go check out the story. What information are we surrounding ourselves? Another big one, somebody that I still don't hear about at all, but a story that really stuck with me. Somebody named Maggie Lena Walker.
Okay.
No one's heard of her. She's absolutely incredible, and what this woman accomplished through all types of adversity, and nothing would hold her back. So she was born in Richmond in the late 1800s, daughter of an enslaved person, and was like thrust into the, I guess, Jim Crow era, where there's no opportunity, there's no job, there's no services, there's no nothing.
Yeah.
She sees this, and she saw that her community had nowhere to get these services, so she decided to make it. She became the first female bank president. Again, not to be a bank president, it's to provide banking solutions for her community. She did this as first female ever. She did this as an African-American female in Richmond, Virginia, against all odds.
Right.
And then she continued to create businesses to serve her community, helped her too, but provided jobs and provided valuable things that the community needed. She went on to start a clothing store. There was nowhere for her community to buy clothes. Starts a clothing store, employs more people. Then the clothing store couldn't find anywhere to source the clothing. Guess what? She opens a factory and creates the clothing, and she's kept on doing it. why does nobody know her story? Why does nobody know her story?
Seriously.
So what are we learning about? Are we learning about, all the bad, there's bad out there.
Right.
And there's people, we have a humankind, a whole humanity of history of people being bad to people. But there's also a whole human history of inspiration. What are we focused on?
Exactly. No, that's awesome. That's a great story. And like, when you have the true value, the hurdles look smaller. The hurdles are overcomable. The mountains are smaller. Whatever analogy you want to make there. When you know exactly what it is you want to do, you're going to accomplish it because you're going to push through any adversity.
Book I just finished reading called Second Mountain, and it talks about how people that have achieved some level of professional success, that's climbing the first mountain. You get to the top and it's like, now what?
Exactly.
And then you are able to refocus on not just me, but able to focus more on the give back.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that is, I spent enough time of my life worrying about me. I've entered the phase of life where I am now able to really spend a lot more time and energy focused on trying to help other people and lift up other people around me.
Yeah. Well, that's something I've been impressed with you over the last couple of years is your give back and like everything you do to help people and just like I said, give back. So I know you're really involved with SHP beds. I want to hear a little bit more about that from you.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I have two big give back initiatives that I'm working on. The most recent and I think most fun and the easiest, the most is SHP Beds. We're a charity that provides beds and bedding to children that do not have a bed to sleep on. It's a nationwide organization. There are 300 some chapters around the country. They're all over. We serve where we live in Montgomery County in Maryland, Montgomery Village. And we have so far gotten, we just delivered our 34th bed. So that is literally 34 kids that without our volunteers coming together would have slept on the floor last night, that were able to have a comfortable, safe, brand new bed of their own last night.
That's awesome.
And it is really, it's great to be able to pull my friends together and the community together to do some good and spread some good. And it's 100% volunteer and donor-based organization. So it started off being all just my friends and family doing me favors. But we have really, it's been incredible to see the community coming out and stepping up hugely and providing all sorts of help, whether it just be a financial contribution. We've had a number of different organizations that come out in big volunteer groups. There's so many different pieces of the puzzle that need to happen here, and every little bit of help, every little bit helps. Little bit helps. So SHP Beds, Montgomery Village, we always have events coming up. We got deliveries going the next couple of weeks. So by the time this comes out, hopefully we'll definitely be over the 34 mark. And exciting things to come with that. And then my other big give back initiative is try to help folks. Whether we call it money coaching. Or helping folks with financial freedom, but improving folks' finances. There is so much information out there. It is overwhelming, and it gets to be too much. And when it's too much, folks freeze and do nothing. And sticking money under the mattress ain't going to do it.
Analysis paralysis.
And piling money into throwing money away into a car payment ain't going to do it. We don't know what is the right way to do it. Well, the information's out there. If we're getting the information from people who are paid to be giving the information, well, I have a feeling it might kind of veer towards what that person is selling. I take much more of an Uncle Scott approach. I don't charge anything for it. It's just, hey, you got questions. I am not saying that this is the definite right answer. I will say what I did. I will say what I would do. And I love being that Uncle Scott to whomever. And so far it's been mostly friends. It's been a couple folks that I've just kind of met through SHP that I've been able to help. And yeah, I get so much joy out of kind of spreading this free information. I was blessed to grow up in a house where money was not a taboo subject.
Okay, that's good.
I don't, in so many households it's so taboo. How are the kids ever going to learn what to do if not only we're not talking about it, if you're modeling exactly the right way to do it, great. I don't think the average American is modeling perfect money habits. How else do we learn? Well, let's go find a mentor or a Sherpa or an Uncle Scott out there. And I love helping coach people up on their money. And ideally would love to help folks really find that financial freedom, because that is a huge component to the happiness. Mm-hmm. If we're so caught up in how I'm putting money or food on the table, it doesn't leave too much time for meditation and thought about other people.
No.
Let's get the money part figured out so that you can focus on not money, but like happiness.
Exactly.
And that to me is the actual financial freedom. Is it just gives you the freedom to not worry about money and go live your life and do what you want to do.
Exactly. One of my kids was talking about a conversation he had with another kid on the bus or whatever. I don't know the whole backstory, but something like that, about they have more money than we do or it's whatever. And wife and I were like, well, what our families have doesn't matter. You're broke. We don't have any money. It's our money collectively. Like, I don't want my kids looking at the money that I have thinking it's their money. Mm-hmm. Of course they're spoiled rotten. Don't get me wrong. Like they're doing travel sports, travel summer sports. It's, they're getting spoiled rotten, but we're investing in them is what we're doing. We're making sure that they're happy, and we're giving them opportunities to learn and grow and fail in safe places. But I don't want them looking at it saying, I don't have to work hard because I got that to fall back on. Like, there's a separation there. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not supporting my kids. Mm-hmm. They get everything. Mm-hmm. But I don't want them thinking that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm not getting into personal finances here. I could be doing a lot better. I could be doing a lot worse. I'm very grateful for where I'm at.
It's all relative, though. Like,
exactly.
Are we looking at, like, the people that live within a half mile here? Or are we looking at, like, well, compared to somebody living here 200 years ago or someone living right now in, I don't know, a lot of the world? I would rather live here than live in the rest of the world. And I'm not saying America's perfect. It's not.
Right.
But I'd rather live here now than most other places kind of at any other time of human history, I think. And that's another controversial statement. I'm coming with a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But I do truly believe that. And we'll leave that for another. We got a lot of future podcasting to do, Joe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing I want to sort of end on that note is, like, adversity is not the enemy. Adversity builds character. Adversity gives you a comparison. Like, if you win all the time, you don't understand what that actually is.
Nor have you learned any actual valuable lesson.
And you got to learn how to fail, and you got to learn how to fail gracefully and learn from your failures and not just blame somebody, whether it's yourself or somebody else. Like, own it, look at it, and say, oh, this is why this happened. What do I do to win next time?
Another example of Joe out-eloquenting me. The way that I put it is fall forward. So fall graceful sounds a little nicer. I like that. But the point is, are we gaining something? But growing up, I think our generation got it all backwards. Growing up, it was like, you can't fail. Failure's bad. Failure's the enemy. No, failure's not the enemy. Bad failure, failing wrong is the enemy.
Correct.
Learning from the failure and putting something in place to not do it again or to do it differently so it doesn't go as bad. That's the correct way to operate through life. So all of my trying to avoid mistakes, I think were almost a detriment. Some of those mistakes could have maybe learned something along the way.
Well, one of my mantras, and you're going to say is doing the same thing. One of my mantras is, our character is not defined by the mistakes that we make. It's defined by what we do in response to said mistakes. And I believe that wholeheartedly. If I make a failure and with a client, I'm owning it. I'm not trying to hide it. I'm not trying to brush it under the rug. I'm calling my client saying, I did this. I'm going to make it right. Whatever that is.
It's funny. That was also a Nathan family mantra.
Oh, was it?
And RIP to Pops. But that was definitely something that he would say over and over that we can't control what happens. We can control how we respond.
Exactly.
And that, unfortunately, is another parallel. And not to get too heavy, I lost my father pretty young. Same exact thing that you recently lost your mother from, like literally the exact same diagnosis. And, starting at that point, I had a lot of folks talk about how it had to grow up quick and all the negative, and it's not a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. Right. The farther away from it I get, and I this is not going to get twisted in me saying this is good. It's not good. I'd rather it not have happened.
Yeah.
2 decades later, I would not be the same person now.
Yeah.
Had it not gone through that at that time.
Exactly.
Not to get too heavy.
Yeah.
Weren't we here to talk about happiness?
But again, to that point, you have to understand the other side of happiness. You have to understand the sadness and those other things, because they're there. Everybody's going to experience it.
And without the sadness,
happiness
I don't think there can be happiness, or happiness doesn't mean anything, or something.
Yeah. It goes the same thing. If you can't struggle, if there's no adversity, then nothing really matters. So if you are happy all the time, your baseline's off, you don't really know. And then ultimately what happens is when you finally get to sadness, it's really, really, really hard.
I think if we do it unhealthy, yes, because I don't know that we are ever actually working through the negative. And I did a great job of brushing it under the rug for a really, really, really long time. Not saying brush it under the rug, not saying ignore or bury your head in the sand.
Correct.
But each person chooses what are we focused on.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite of bury your head in the sand and brush under the rug. Because you can't be truly happy if that's the case. You can have happy moments. You can't be happy.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I am so grateful for entering this journey of mental well-being and mental health and the search for happiness and all that kind of stuff when I did, because I don't know how I would have been able to process my mom if I wasn't in this journey, if I wasn't already there. Because, I probably would have just not processed it and it would have affected me forever. Mm-hmm. Did I do the best job in the world? No. It's not possible. Did I do the best I could? Yep. Did I slow down to realize, I need to really focus on this? Yeah, I did.
And continue to focus on Joe.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm painting a rosy picture, and life has ups, life has downs. So I'm not saying that these negatives aren't real. They're real.
Oh yeah.
They are real. But so are the positives. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we can, for most of human history, if you wanted water, you had to walk to the closest river, and that's how you got water. And you spent so much of your time seeking water. Mm-hmm. Now, without thinking about it, you wake up in a grog, you stumble over to the sink to brush your teeth, and you flip a switch and boom, water.
Safe water.
Safe water. Well, I was actually about to say safe clean water, and then the privilege of, and not everywhere has that. And that
exactly.
We're joking about it and making light of it, but at its heart, I think that really reinforces what I'm saying. Don't take it for granted. By flipping the water switch, be appreciative. Not everyone has that now.
Right.
Let alone nobody had it a few hundred years before that or any time before.
I couldn't imagine. I mean, my aqua goal is a gallon of water a day. And I could not imagine trying to hit a gallon of water a day if I had to walk to the river every time. And the other side of drinking a lot of water is you go to the bathroom a lot. Like, we have internal plumbing. I don't have to go freeze to go to the bathroom.
Back to Maggie Lena Walker that I mentioned, the daughter of the enslaved woman. She, towards the end of her life, I mean, during her lifetime, people knew that she was a success and people knew her name then more so than now.
Yeah.
And towards the end of her life, somebody was, she was asked a lot, just about how she was able to accomplish what she accomplished. And her go-to saying is that she was not born let me back up. So her mom, out after slavery, her mom ran a laundry business in Richmond. And, a laundry business at that time wasn't you go to the laundromat and you do laundry. It was you take a basket on your head, walk the clothes on your head down to the river, get in the river to wash it. So this was the clothing business that her mom ran.
Yeah.
And so Maggie Walker would ask, how'd you learn how to do all this? And she would say that she was not born with a silver spoon in her mouth, but she was born with a laundry basket on her head.
There you go.
And it wasn't from being a victim of all the things she didn't have. It was, okay, I see a problem. Where's the solution? I can bring the solution. Let's lift everybody up in the process.
Exactly. So I'm not going to spoilers, and we talked about this a little bit off air, but I just finished a book called The Mysterious Case of Rudolph Diesel. And, you're going from a minority type scenario and working themselves off in the, bootstraps and not, fighting adversity. But Rudolph Diesel was a real person. Diesel engine is not named after the fuel. The fuel is named after the engine. And it wasn't even the fuel that he built the engine to run on. He built the diesel engine, which is revolutionized the world. He wanted to build it because he saw with steam engines, which was the main thing at the time, how the artisan class was completely rolled out because the big factories were the only ones that had the space and the money to get the big steam engines in there. So he wanted a compact, efficient, reliable engine for the artisan class. And that's why he did it. And it's a really, 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 I'm not going to give any spoilers, really, really interesting story about his passing and like how that happened and the things that are around. But he disappeared in 1913. It's not that long ago. I mean, it's 100 plus years ago, but it's really not that long ago in the scheme of things. Like, how do we not know that? Like, as just a general generation, how did and everybody I talked to, like, I didn't know Diesel was a person. He completely revolutionized the world, changed the world. And he did it for the right reasons.
I will put it on the reading list. I think I just heard about this book recently somewhere else, so I will add it to the list.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Are there any other bird seeds you want to drop on the topics we talked about?
I think we covered enough for today.
Awesome. Well, dude,
but the happiness is out there. Actually, there is two things.
Okay, great.
The happiness is out there, and would happily chat with anyone further if they wanted to. Also, check us out, SHP Beds, shpbeds.org. We're Maryland, Montgomery Village, and yeah, come check us out at an event, or we have a lot of fun. So it's about getting kids off the floor. It's also about coming together as a community.
Yep.
To do something good together. The people that I've met through this, so it started off with friends, but now the people that I've met through doing this are talk about big-hearted.
Yeah.
And big smiles. Yeah. My girl Sharonda has the biggest smile, and awesome. If I ever am not in a great mood, just get on the FaceTime with Sharonda and see her smile. She's incredible, but I did not know her before this, right. And the community that's come together through SHP Beds has been incredible. So come check us out.
It's awesome. You said it's shpbeds.org.
Yep.
Awesome.
And we're Maryland, Montgomery Village.
Awesome. Well, Scott, so good to catch up with you and, just kind of dive deeper into these things. I find that when I just read something or do it myself, it's good. But when I actually have to try to explain it and dive deeper with somebody, then it actually means something. I internalize it. So, like I've said all along, the Birdseeds is a selfish project for me to continue my journey, and I hope that by listening in, people get something out of it and then continue their journey. But I do it for me.
Well, I definitely have, and I please keep it up.
Will do.
Please keep it up. Love what you're doing, and yeah, definitely. I would say I don't think there's been an episode that I haven't at least gotten one thing out of, and a lot of them have gotten a whole bunch of things. There's been a few of the guest episodes that I've listened to more than once.
Awesome. Well, that's great, man. Well, thanks again for coming on board. Thanks everybody for listening. It's Birdseeds. Have an awesome day.